I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this show is called Bruce on the Loose. I talk to people in city government, the schools, and throughout Medina County. Today we're privileged to have Warriors Journey Home program. Peggy Hegbar is a volunteer and a trained facilitator. Reverend Dr. John Schluep is with us as well, the CEO of that group. And John, thank you, and Peggy, for being here today and sharing your information about this very important group.
Thank you, Bruce.
John, it seemed like I grew up in the Vietnam era, and it really did divide our nation. Those of us on campus certainly had our views, and those people in ROTC and serving had their duties, and it really did divide our country right down the middle. How did this impact those veterans coming home?
Well, I think it impacted them in a very negative way because the piecemeal way in which they were brought home. They didn't come home as a unit. They came home primarily individually, and I have met with Vietnam veterans. In fact, I've taken 3 groups of Vietnam veterans back to Vietnam for healing and reconciliation work. They don't feel like they ever came home, the groups I'm working with. They felt like home had changed so much and was not welcoming them. And that was true not only from the civilian population, but from other veterans organizations as well. It was felt like, well, we lost that war. World War II veterans won their wars, if winning and losing is the whole object of it. So I think there was a silent, painful scream from Vietnam veterans. They began to isolate, and I find when I look statistically, this is true of every war. So this is not unique to Vietnam. I think the lack of support, and not every person in this country is in favor of going to war, whether it's World War II or whether it's a Korean War or Persian Gulf War. There's always resistance, and I think you need to have that in a democratic republic. You know, it keeps us from getting carried away. It impacted the Vietnam veterans I know, and it impacted me as well as a veteran. Was negative. It didn't allow the wound to heal, the invisible wound. And the Vietnam veterans were young, much younger than any other time in our history. So they didn't have the skills, the coping skills. Interesting fact, when the Royal Marines went to the Falkland Islands, the British were intentional about bringing them back to England as a unit on some slow-moving troop transports, ships, where they had a chance to decompress, to talk about what had taken place, to respond to the leadership that was there, whether it was non-commissioned officers or the officer corps. And as I said, in Vietnam, it was, man, you're getting out, you've done your year, boom, we're going to take you home. And you know, the Marines in Vietnam spent more than a year in country. So yeah, there's the unit cohesiveness, the connection that you make. You're being replaced by someone, and there's a sense that I'm letting my unit down because I'm not there to protect these guys and take care of them. And I've talked to many wounded veterans who were taken away because of their wounds, and a part of what was going on with their soul was that they were abandoning their unit. They wanted to get back to their unit, and that's part of that warrior ethos. So we're still recovering from that one.
John, I'm perplexed. If other countries, and we talked at a previous show about how Indians brought their warriors back and supported and assisted them, why wouldn't the United States copy the British or other civilizations in treating their veterans differently and getting them immersed in the society more successfully?
Well, we're talking about social structuring, and this is what we're trying to do with Warriors
Right.
Journey Home, is to create a grassroots, organic response to how to bring a warrior home, and bringing a veteran home and calling them a hero. I don't know of any vet that wants to be a hero. They just felt like they did their duty. They participated in things that they wouldn't normally have participated in. But we need to share that responsibility. We need to help carry that with them. Not for them, but with them. And listen to their wisdom. Allow that growth and the healing to take place. So I kind of got lost here on your question as to why. Well, it's not just the British. I don't know if they were intentional when they brought them back from the Falkland Islands, but that's the way it worked out. Okay, yeah, Native Americans in this country, what they refer to as Turtle Island, their warriors have a different place in their culture and in their community. And it's not a veneration type of thing where, oh, you know, you're so thankful that you did this. It's there's a sharing of responsibility. There's a wisdom that someone brings home that they can speak to, that they can guide us with. Again, it's about the intention, which is to protect and guard that which is important to the community. The politics of war, you know, and we're coming up with some things now through Warriors Journey Home of informational, educational segments, short videos that will be available later in the year to talk about what can we do. And, you know, Peggy's doing it at Trinity UCC here in Wadsworth, Trinity Church. But why can't the faith communities have a Sunday school class or an educational program on a just war or on the moral injury? And there's so many books available now, firsthand accounts of what people have done, but also some excellent research has been done. There's a book called Adaptive Disclosure, which discusses moral injury. It's a little heady. It's a scientific type of approach. A lot of quantitative research went into that. But
John is not mentioning that he has written 2 small books about the soul cry and things that churches can do. There's a book where there are some programs that churches and liturgies that churches can do to raise awareness and be participative and begin to claim responsibility. Our job as civilians.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Peggy. That was thank you.
That was a good segue to get John a little publicity there for his book.
Well, one of the issues I find in the church is that some churches stay away from anything that resembles patriotism or nationalism because they're lean more towards the peaceful or pacifist entities, and others want to create a nationalistic spirit that includes the cross. And I don't subscribe to either one of those venues. I walk down the middle of the road and get stoned from both sides. We can write a liturgy for a service of worship that has talks about the tenets of sacrificial living, sacrificial giving, being able to care for someone, to put your life on the line for someone else, and that's something that is a strength of character. And you know, my goodness, you know, I am very eclectic in my spiritual practices. I grew up in a Roman Catholic church. Joined a Protestant church, United Methodist, and then made my way into the Congregational Church and the United Church of Christ. But my practices, I am comfortable praying in a mosque with Muslim brothers I'm comfortable praying with Buddhists in Vietnam. I'm comfortable in just about every setting within Christianity. So I think those things that bring healing to us. We have our healing circles of trust. We also have a one-day retreat that we do at a nearby church camp, where we use a prayer and purification, like a sweat house. In Celtic spirituality, they did some healing work through their sweat house. Native Americans, it's commonly called a sweat lodge. So culturally, and it's normal. It's also one of the oldest forms of healing ceremony known to us. But the thing is, you have to be intentional about it. The ceremony doesn't fix anything. It's the crucible in which we live that allows the healing to take place. And to be healed, you first have to cleanse the wound. So the ritual becomes very important. Malidome Some wrote a book called The Healing Wisdom of Africa. And in his work, he says there's 3 things that are essential for a person to be well. You have to have a community, you have to have a ritual, and you have to have healing. To me, that sounds like what a faith community should be doing. Be the community, don't exclude anyone. Everybody's welcome here. Conduct a ritual that's intentional and expect the healing to take place. And sometimes that healing will require making restitution. It'll be making a confession. It'll be reconciliation. It's not easy work. It's hard work. On the 3 times I've taken vets back to Vietnam, they write the itinerary for us. Where did you serve? Who did you serve with? Where do we need to go? And we've been back to the ambush sites, the physical ambush site, where a guy got blown out of his vehicle, and spent the next 14 months in the hospital. We did ceremony, a sacred ceremony at that site. And he found healing. And he told me, he says, I feel like I'm coming home now. And now we started taking family members with the veteran, or the family member by themselves, to Vietnam. And we'll do a few more of those trips, as long as the Vietnam veterans are getting old.
They are. No question about it.
So,
Peggy, you're a trained facilitator. Do you see that veterans in your circle of trust respond more readily to other veterans?
They do. I think there is an instant camaraderie. There's a shared knowledge. I mean, every military person goes through basic training, if nothing else. So they have common experiences, whether or not they've been in a battlefield situation or whether they were serving in Germany as a support person. But they do. There's just a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood that is instant. It's almost like a sorority sister, or fraternity brother. There's that connection. And that's the community that then becomes the crucible, as John was saying, where we can share and listen and allow someone to speak words they've never spoken, things they've never told a soul in their life that needs to be unburdened from their heart and their soul.
And I don't think it matters if it's a World War II veteran or Vietnam veteran or even Afghanistan. There's that esprit de corps, if you will.
Absolutely.
The camaraderie.
And it doesn't matter the branch of service. Right. It can be Army and Air Force and Navy, and there's still that sense, whether it's Coast Guard, there just is that instant camaraderie. It was interesting to me that I was talking with a young person in their 40s, that's young for me, who was saying, He'd never talked to anyone. His girlfriend doesn't understand why he is the way he is. He said, you know, my grandma almost raised me. And he said, on my way home, I wrote a list. I wrote her a letter. I wanted to tell her all the things that I'd done. She'd been my spiritual confidant. And he said to me, I've still never given her that letter. Well, I knew, because of the connection, I knew this young man's grandmother. And I separately, at a later date, said to her, do you realize that your grandson has a letter that he has never given to you? He wanted to tell you what he had done. And the grandmother said to me, I don't think I could hear it. I don't think I could read it. I don't think I want to know. And that's all right. That's not to say bad on her. That's to say the rest of the community needs to hear that. Someone needs to be able to listen to what this young man felt like he needed to say, and have somebody say, you know what? In those situations, you did the only thing that you could do. You did what you were told to do, what your responsibility was. Was it against your moral faith? Yes. But in a war situation, you do what you have to do to save the comrades that you're with.
And that's just one story, and everyone's story is different.
Exactly.
But again, getting that to share that, to get that out to, and he couldn't even talk to his grandmother. Maybe again, he might share that with another veteran because they would know a little bit what he went through.
And you know what? That then creates ripples. Somebody else says, well, you know what? I've got something I've never said either. And this is my thing to share. So in a circle of trust, we agree that we're not there to crosstalk. Our sacred job in that hour or hour and a half or two that we spend together is to listen and support so that I can take in, and I agree to help carry that burden. That young man should not to this day be having to carry that burden on his own. And his girlfriend needs a place to come. She doesn't know why he's acting like he's acting. His anger level is worse than it ever has been. We have a group that's run by Shelley Rambo. Is that her last name, Shelley?
Frederickson.
Frederickson. In Oak Hill Presbyterian Church in Ellett. That is a group specifically for families of veterans, because sometimes they can be strong hearts and be a part of where the veterans are. Sometimes they need a place of their own to say, God, my dad yells at me all the time, and I don't know why. It's nothing I've done. But the kids take on the feeling that it's their fault. It's something that they've done. We need to help heal that.
And with extra tours, if it's Afghanistan or Iraq, that separation may have been, as the students are developing, and as an educator, there are, certainly very important activities therein and milestones in those children's
that
background.
Their father or mother is missing. They don't see their child grow up. They don't do the birthdays. They're not there for Christmases. Yeah, and so they miss out. The person, let me tell you, the person that comes home is not the person who went. I saw that in my own marriage. I was married 3 months when my husband was sent to Vietnam during the Tet Offensive. He came back, and the first night he was back, I'm like, where is the man I married? The person who came home was not the person I married. And I struggled for 13 years because I took my marriage vows very clearly, till death us do part. And I literally heard God say to me one day, if you stay in this relationship, you are going to be the one who dies. And I literally felt like God said to me, it's okay. You've done everything you know to do. There weren't programs like this back then. He wouldn't go for help. And I didn't know what else to do, but I knew I had to save myself.
John, what could we do to have veterans take advantage of the family offering in Ellet or Trinity? I think it's on Thursday at 6:30.
The second Thursday of every month at 6:30.
And it's open to
the community, to people from out of our community.
Even if someone comes from Worcester or Macedonia,
yes,
they could.
Canton. Yes, it's completely open, and there are circles throughout Northeast Ohio. Someone can go on the website, Warrior's Journey Home, and find out the locations and who's facilitating when they meet. Some meet on Sundays, some meet on Wednesdays, and so there's all kinds of times, and the availability is there.
And they don't have to say anything.
They don't have to say a thing. And I just want to say, Peggy, thank you for sharing that story. That is a healing circle story. And when you tell that story, people are touched by that. I got a God lump in my throat. So anyway, but thank you. And that's the type of stories that are told in that safe crucible of the healing circle.
Right.
You ask me, how do we get a vet to do this? You don't. You're not gonna drag them in there. You're not gonna make them do it. I use the horse whisperer as a model for that. And let me get to that in just a second. But the grandma could go to a circle. Mm-hmm. She can't hear it from her grandson, but she could hear other vets in a healing circle of trust tell their story. And now grandma is hearing what he went through.
Right.
And I've seen that time and time again, where family members will leave a healing circle of trust and say, I got to talk to my parents, or I've got to talk to my brother or sister, I got to talk to my spouse, because of what they're hearing someone else say. Now, the horse whisperer, if you remember, Tom Booker plays the horse whisperer in the story itself, and it's based on a person, I think he's in Montana, that is
the actual horse whisperer.
Yeah, the actual horse whisperer. Pilgrim is the horse in this story, and Pilgrim is from Northeast United States. Gets hit by a tractor trailer trying to protect his young rider, who's like a 13 or 14-year-old girl. She loses a leg in the process. The horse is damaged, traumatized. They're encouraged to put the horse down. You can't get near it. So the mom takes it out to the horse whisperer. And here's the interesting part of this story for me, and as it relates to Warrior's Journey Home. The first thing that Tom Booker does is he cuts that horse loose and lets it run in the safety of an enclosed pasture. And that horse runs until it can't run any longer. And when it stops running, the horse whisperer goes out and sits down in the middle of the field and just waits. The horse knows that he's there. When you watch that in a movie, the horse, every next scene, is getting a little bit closer to the horse whisperer. Mm-hmm. That horse knows it needs help, but it doesn't trust. It's been hurt. It's been wounded. And so
it goes ahead on its terms.
It goes on its terms, yeah. So I work with a lot of vets, and they'll sit in a healing circle of trust if they get there. I've had spouses call me and say, I want to get my husband into this healing circle. How do I do that? I said, you don't. I said, you show up. You learn about what we're doing. And then go to your husband or go to your son and say, I need your support. I've been going to this thing, and I would love for you to come with me. Not a bait and switch. It's just I need your support in this. if there's one thing a veteran likes to do, it's to help somebody, you know, or save somebody, you know. But you can't fix them. And oftentimes, when that vet feels like I'm going with my sister to support her, it makes a difference. Not just for the family, but for that vet now as well. And it's not trickery. It's you don't have to say anything. You're the horse. I'm going to sit here and wait for you. Waiting is hard. It's difficult. So.
May I just read? This is a quote from one of my favorite authors.
Certainly.
Chrysilla Pinka Estes.
Please.
I just read this the other day, especially in light of Ukraine, and there's a lot of trauma happening in the world today. It says, ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. We don't have, and as Mother Teresa said, we can't all do great things in a big way, but we can all do small things with great love. And I think that's a piece of what Warriors Journey Home is doing. In our communities, one person at a time, one soul that can receive compassion is a great thing. It changes families, it ripples out and changes communities, and hopefully can change a nation and the world.
Peggy and John, thank you for all you do for Warriors Journey Home, and thank you for viewing. I do this show because I learn a great deal, and I certainly have learned a lot today, and certainly it's a group that you really need to support in your own way. Just a little bit of support goes a long way. Thanks for viewing.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.